Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning and happy belated Veterans Day, everyone.
Yeah, that's one of the things I thought. Hey, I could put it on a list, but it was yesterday. But we probably should at least mention that and all. It's a holiday that doesn't get as much attention as it deserves, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody's back to trying to prove the suckers and losers hoax, right? And I got to thinking about that. So one of the things that they say Trump said there that he does say, right, and he said this more than once. He's like, I don't understand why people do this, right? It's a level of selflessness that he doesn't really get, right? And he's trying to wrap his mind around, you uproot yourself from your family and go to some foreign land and sleep on the ground and sleep in trenches and risk your life and all this stuff for the country, right? And it's just like where does that come from? Where within us does that come from? And I think that's a good valuable question, that we need to understand. Like how did we get so lucky to have so many of these people with their hearts in the right place to protect us and keep us on the right side?
Yeah, I mean, most of my interaction with those in the military are these young families that move to the area because they've enrolled in the Uniformed Services University Health Service, which is you join a branch of the military, uh, you will get paid a small stipend or salary while you get your medical education for free. You owe the military 7 years, and then after that you may depart if you want, or you can stick around and make it a career, whatever you decide to do. Um, but and so they get to become these pretty good doctors, which they can parlay into nice salaries and stuff like that. But they also are frequently deployed. They do have, so their deployments will come up for a lot of them, and so that's a lot of sacrifice for a young family. Leaving the wife behind or whatever, and the kids, and going off for 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it may be. We're very lucky that we have people who are willing to have the service rather than the models in a lot of other countries where you have mandatory 1, 2, 3 years of service where you have to do it. It works for them, and we used to have a draft, when I was a child, and all of that. But I like the all volunteer force in general. I like how we have run things in general. And it does take a special kind of person to serve. And I will. That's why I'll always take my hats off to my cousin who made a career out of serving in the Air Force. Retired as a medical advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff this summer, and is now going to enjoy the next phase of his life in Utah. And he might do some other things because I mean he's close to my age, but that doesn't mean he couldn't still do other things. And on top of his military pension, earn some, get some consulting, do some other stuff, but he can also enjoy his life. But he's been all over the world, and he loved it. I mean, when his retirement hit, so his retirement ceremony was in like July or whatever it was. His official retirement date was like I think November 1 or whatever it was. So the in between time, he and his wife basically flew to other parts of the world, back to Germany, places they had been stationed, before they land back, in Utah, where they had bought a home, and they were not Utah. They hadn't grown up in Utah. They had grown up in California originally. So, but yeah, those are very, very special people that do that to make a sacrifice. I could just not imagine doing that myself. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't in my head, it wasn't my mentality to do that at all. But being
Me either. I grew up, I got all the ads in the mail. I remember when you were in high school, get all the mail from them. And I'm like, this looks cool, but I was already a sports writer. Like I was working on the morning paper in Shreveport when I was 15. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm headed toward something other than that, but certainly nothing against it. And people in my family, my dad was in the Army, a lot of grandfathers and cousins and all that have been in the Army, been in the armed forces. So one of my cousins was Air Force. She just got out a few years ago. And so, those people who give their lives to this, we owe them something. It's not a small debt either.
Right. I mean, yeah. And we kind of grew up in an era where there was a likelihood where the siblings would, all served in World War II or something like that. And they might have children who might go, but might not decide to serve. But there was probably more of that then than there is now in a lot of ways. But I always admire that. I think that's why it's great to have the ROTC programs, around. I mean, I think that helps build some character and gets the kids involved. They may not continue it, but they'll learn a heck of a lot.
They learn a heck of a lot, and it's a lot of Marty was in it his senior year in high school, and he's in it now in college, and like you go see it, and you meet some really impressive young people.
Yeah,
a lot of people are a lot of immigrant kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's kind of turned into a little bit to an opportunity for others to get a head start on things, because the GI Bill is not like it used to be. But when you get out, you've got some ability, some money that you can put towards schooling and other things. And a lot of them, when they serve for, if they serve for a few years, they start learning some skills anyway,
Right.
On the mechanical side or engineering side or whatever. And then they can add, school on top of that, and then come away with something that turns into a pretty good career. So it's not a bad path for them in their life.
Right. You know how to dress, how to keep your clothes clean, how to keep your stuff in order, how to talk to important people, how to shake hands, greet people, Those are like, you talk about, I always see these things in school. They should teach us how to cook and write and balance our checkbook. You ought to be able to figure out that for yourself. But, how do you get a job? How do you talk to the people who actually hire? No one talks about teaching that. And these kids leave with real skills in areas that you wouldn't even think about are related to the military.
So we probably, you're probably friends with Melissa Mullins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, she's got her son down at what?
BMI playing soccer. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there she's posting pictures of him, and which is, like she said, he never smiles. So
he never smiles. They cut his hair now.
Yeah. But it's really neat to see him. I mean, I think we both have followed her. She's been very social. Yeah. Posted a lot of stuff about, growing, raising a kid as a single mom and everything like that. But look what's going on there. I mean, yeah. Ben has been very straight, and is now, I think he's probably enjoying himself there. He seems to, I don't think that, 5 years ago or whatever, I would have thought that was the path he was going to take. I mean, soccer was definitely a thing for him, and he was apparently very good. Yeah. But I never thought that he'd go to a military school. But that's, the discipline. I mean, yeah, you're willing to get your head shaved and all that. More power to you. Yeah. I mean, when
you're out of that
anyway, but
yeah, but when you're out of that, like especially in Virginia, VMI is a powerful network.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's, yeah. So we definitely salute our veterans, and we thank those that have served and are serving today. That's something that we need, and we should always remember, never forget. So before we hit the news, like there's no news anyway. So let's just spend it on National Pizza with the works except anchovies day. So I had like 3 things to choose from, and I thought, okay, it's like, all right, I eat a fair amount of pizza, but the anchovies seem to be just very much hated.
Yeah, anchovies and pineapple, people will get violent about, but
Yeah, yeah, and so I will admit on this show that I do eat a lot of pizza with pineapple, for which people will probably throw a lot of brickbats at me and whatnot, but it's tasty for me. I don't mind. I mean, my wife loves the works, like these veggie type of things, and I'm fine with that. Um, I'm not sure really that I've really had much in anchovies, except that Koreans, and I'm married to a Korean. Koreans love anchovies, so. She may not be totally supportive. I don't know how she feels about anchovies. Maybe she doesn't like them as much as most Koreans or something. I don't know. Um, I guess that's
Yeah.
an acquired taste.
I learned to eat pizza at this place called Pizza King in Shreveport. I'd never we didn't have it growing up. My parents never served me pizza. I don't ever remember them ordering pizza or coming home with a box of pizza anytime that we were growing up. But when I got where I was buying my own food, one of the places, there was a place called Pizza King, and their specialty was big, huge, thick pizzas, and their specialty was kind of a works thing. So that's kind of how I learned to eat pizza. It was pretty good.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think that if I don't know that my mom was a big. Well, was she a pizza fan? Dad, I don't know. I'm trying to think about the same thing. Did I eat a lot? I've eaten more pizza as an adult than I did as a child. I'm sure of that.
I'm sure I was 17, 18 years old before I ever had a bite of pizza.
I to be honest, most of the pizza I had for a long time, when I was like I would buy my own food here and there, was the Celeste pizza for one,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
the Elio's, square pizza. So I ate a lot of frozen pizza, not a
I,
lot of fresh pizza. Uh, so eating fresh pizza is like, oh, this is much better.
yeah. Yes, it is.
So, but there are some frozen pizzas that have actually upped their game.
That's
To
right.
an
That's
extent.
right.
They're
That's true.
they're
And
not they're not.
sometimes the best ones are the like complete cheapy store brand ones. Like they put too much cheese, and that's what I like. So.
Well, the funny thing is that before we move on here is that so both Costco and Sam's have pizza in their food courts, and everybody swears by just about everything in the Costco food court. And we go to Costco more than we ever go to Sam's. But my wife she actually favors the pizza at Sam's Club a little bit more than the pizza at Costco, which is kind of a major breakthrough in that sense. Because otherwise there's really, but otherwise, the only other differentiating factor between Sam's and Costco for us is if we ever go to Sam's is that we're thinking like, yeah, we'll go ahead and get the pretzel and like the ice cream thing because it tastes better. Costco doesn't have pretzels, and the Sam's ice cream is better or something like that. I guess but other than that, but we don't go to Sam's that often. So anyway, all right. So enough with the pizza. If my friend Dwight was around, he would regale us with things. This podcast I do on Friday night, he ends with a commercial that he put together for a pizza joint. Okay. So we at that point in time, we all just basically leave the stream.
Let him do his pizza
So
thing.
it was like, I don't need to be watching a minute worth of commercial for a pizza place that I am not going to go to because it's like an hour away. Okay, not going to happen.
Okay.
All right. News now is that so we're at what day? We're at November 12th, so we're technically at day 43, I guess, of the shutdown, but it's coming near to an end here. Speaker Johnson has called the House back, so the members are making their way back. I don't know if they've all made their way back, but I guess a vote will take place maybe sometime today on doing that. But the big thing is that Democrats, several more Democrats crossed the line to get to the 60 votes necessary to move this spending bill forward, and so that we could get to the point where the House could then vote on it and send it to President Trump. And the old November 21st deadline or whatever that was is now January 30th with a few changes. But the Democrats, they they didn't really get what they wanted. I mean, in essence, they could have ended this long ago because it's kind of the same thing as it was when we started. Yes.
Right. They got a promise in the Senate to vote on something. Right. And so they'll vote on whatever it is, but it's already going to be something that the Republicans seem united in opposing, which is extending the subsidies. it's one of those tough love moments, but Obamacare is never going to catch up. And if you grant these subsidies, you'll be granting subsidies next year and the year following and the year following, right? Because they're never going to not need them. It's not ever going to get better. So I think it's time to take our medicine. It's pretty early in Trump's term still. People have 3 years to get over whatever they're mad about. And once you get the government, it's the same thing as college. Once you take all the government money out of the market, the prices are going to become a lot more reasonable, right? If you can't sell what you make to customers, then there's no use making it, right? So you have to you got to change your view on that. So I think that I hope that they will stand their ground on the subsidies. I can see them kind of coming up with some kind of small dose of something to, so the Democrats can say they accomplished something, but I don't think they're going to win this. And you got to remember, like, it wasn't just Obamacare subsidies that we're talking about. We're also talking about they wanted all the USAID money restored, the PBS, NPR money restored. All that stuff was part of this, right? That was the reason that, like, it had to be a clean CR and not all this other stuff. And the reason they fought it so hard is because, at this point, if it's not going to be funded, then all the people who work in these agencies, they got to go find something else to do, right? It may come back next year or the year after that. You can't just sit at your house hoping that Congress votes to reopen and refund an agency that you used to work at. So once those people all disappear, the pressure to restore each individual agency declines, and Trump will have reduced the size of the government a pretty good bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Democrats, I mean, they had lots of things on their agenda that they wanted to accomplish, but they decided, and they used healthcare, Obamacare, as kind of the linchpin of, we can sway people with this argument, and then we will just bring all this other garbage along with it, and then we'll be very happy, and we get these agencies back up. Federal government goes back to continuing to be the bloated, organization that it is, and
right. Funding their campaigns and their activism and all that too.
Right. And it's interesting, so none of the 8 Democrats that joined with Republicans are up for re-election. So it wasn't necessarily an act of, say, political courage in that one sense, but they did buck Chuck Schumer, and there's now more heat on Chuck Schumer because now you've got kind of the far left, the Bernie Sanders and these guys. They are hopping mad, right? I mean, they're really furious with Schumer not being able to hold the line there and watching these guys defect, and then in essence giving the Republicans a victory. Though it's funny, I don't know if you saw this in the New York Times. I mean, Ezra Klein was like, he's like, why did the Democrats give in? They were winning,
Right. Well, okay. So a few things on that. One is, they weren't winning, right? They were looking at polls. I mean, I think it's King. It was actually 7 Democrats and 1 independent. King. He said as much. So we weren't winning. We weren't accomplishing anything. They weren't moving, and public opinion went with them because, you got to remember, these guys, they commission their own polls, and they don't want any weight in those polls. They want dead accuracy because they need to make decisions based on what those polling numbers are. And polling numbers were saying you're not getting anywhere. You're not convincing anybody of anything. And, you even had like CNN saying, normally we say that the party that won't vote for the CR is the party causing the shutdown. Why should we not say that you're causing the shutdown? Oh, it's not us, it's them. And, even CNN seemed unimpressed by that argument. What else did you say? You said something else that I was going to remember. Gosh, I can't remember what it was. What did you say before that? Do you remember?
Before?
Yeah, what you were talking about there.
I was just saying that that we had these Democrats and now the left's attack on Schumer.
Oh, Schumer. That was the other point I wanted to make. So they did not buck Schumer is not really quite accurate, right? The reason that you have Tim Kaine voting for this, but Mark Warner not. What's the difference politically between Tim Kaine and Mark Warner? basically nothing, right? They're basically the same person politically, right? So why is Tim Kaine for this and Mark Warner's not? Mark Warner's up for election. And, he has to explain it to the voters sooner. So, when you have eight people out there who are not, have no electoral peril whatsoever, I guess Peters was one of them. He's getting out of the Senate. All the rest of them had either just won election or have no intention of running again. They're not bucking. They were sent out to do this, right? They got just enough. They gave them just enough of a line that they were allowed to say to get out of it. So the idea that this didn't come from Schumer, I don't buy that. I think that he was quite on board with how all this played out.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting possibility, I guess. I mean, of course, if Schumer's willing to take the heat from these other guys, and then that's fine. I mean, I think to an extent, I mean, he did see that they had to do something. The situation was getting worse, and that the Democrats' position was really indefensible. How do you vote? What is it, like 14 times?
Right.
And just can't, and say no. I mean, that's where
and people aren't getting their SNAP or whatever, so that you can stick it in Donald Trump's eye. That doesn't, that no longer clicks. Raw Trump hate is no longer viable politically. That's one of the things that's happened. That's like, it's one, I guess Trump went to the Commanders game on Sunday, and, they show him on the thing. He's wildly cheered, right? But there's always two guys who stick the bird up and all that. And that's naturally who gets on TV. And all the leftists are on TV. And you hear the just roars of cheers. And all the leftists like, they hate him. Look at them all booing. It's like they weren't booing. Every time he goes somewhere, it's predictable. It's like clockwork. You're going to see a thing saying he got booed. There's some, I no doubt there's some guy in the crowd who booed him, right? Or guys, more than one, right? A few, right? Because in any, 60,000, 70,000 people at the game, they're not all Trump fans. I don't pretend they are, but they're not all booing either. And most people, if you say the president's here, I mean, if you think about it, if you were at a ball game and Biden was there, would you be up there sticking your bird up there at Biden? No. Hey, I'm at a game where the president is, I don't love the president, but neither am I going to be a jerk about it. So I think that's where they are on this. So they're kind of being painted as jerks, as they're just full of hate, and you can't say anything to make them happy. And everything he says, they come out with some reason why it's the most horrible thing that's ever happened. And it's like, you can only cry wolf so many times.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, with the way the Commanders are playing, and now that they've got the wonderful,
could have been booing the.
I know. Well, when you've got Marcus Mariota leading your team, it's like, okay, not a lot to cheer about.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you know what? Okay, that's a good question. How about they don't come up with anything? How about federal government since it's governed by state law anyway, right? Health insurance is a state law. So either repeal that and let people sell it across state lines, at which case, that Geico Gecko will be selling us all health insurance in 15 minutes, right? Or don't have a health plan. That shouldn't come from the government. You're buying your health insurance is your business, and they shouldn't be involved. Right. And it's like, no offense, but guys like you, people are subsidizing your health insurance premium, right? Because you have an Obamacare plan, right?
I used to. Now I'm on Medicare.
Oh, okay. That's right. Because you aged out.
I aged out.
I will soon age out.
It's a sad thing to say.
Yeah. We were arguing about basketball on the internet the other day. And I said, the people who think that LeBron is better than Kobe, are LeBron. I mean, LeBron is better than Jordan. They're not very old, right? They're just not old enough. They didn't watch with the level of understanding you need to watch, right? And some guy wrote back, he goes, "You definitely win the old contests." I'm like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, that's where he is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever, I mean, this is created for the way for the governments to really kind of control your health care, and Obama, famously promised, you can keep your health care. You're going to save $2,500, all of this stuff, and it didn't happen. I mean,
Didn't happen.
one of the things that always bothers me about this, and that's why I put on this list, was just that the it's affordable, the Affordable Care Act, but it's really not that affordable without the subsidies,
Right.
right? So it didn't improve situations. We added tons of people to the rolls because everyone was saying, oh, well, we've got this huge crisis in America with all these people who are not insured. But people who weren't insured, a lot of them chose not to be insured, and a lot of them other ways of getting medical care, and hospitals have to provide a certain amount of care to the poor anyway,
Or
and
they're
things like that.
25 years old and they, unless they break their leg playing, beer league softball, they don't really have any medical needs.
Right. And the way the rules are running is that basically, you had to show, the health care, all the life insurance, the health insurance companies had to actually send you a statement every year to show that you were enrolled in a healthcare plan, uh, just in case the IRS came back knocking, saying that the law says that you now have to be covered for 12
Right.
months,
You had
and
to buy a product for the
yeah,
first
you
time
had to
in
buy a
their
product,
career.
and some people were like, I still remember when initially people were like, but I don't want that product. I don't want to
Right.
buy that product. So they tried to find the cheapest thing they could, or they just, they just paid the penalty. That was the other thing. It's like if you didn't buy a health plan, you were getting penalized for not
That's
buying the
right.
health plan. It's like this is nuts. This is not the way it's supposed to work at
Right.
all. So it's really the unaffordable health care plan, and just the way it forces people to do. But and the Republicans would do a much better job. I mean, if they would message more about how this whole thing has been corrupted, because we've talked. You should just mention it, and I mentioned it before. So it's like you have these subsidies. The longer you extend them, the more becomes chance that they are going to be permanent.
That's
Right.
right.
This is exactly right. The
That's right.
penalty The
That's right. And if
penalty
you
was
didn't need
cheaper
the
than, not
insurance,
that they
then
were willing to pay the penalty. It's
that's
because it
right.
was cheaper than the insurance. And it's like, how upside down is that? But the Republicans, they need to get away from where the Democrats are crying about all these health insurance premiums going to skyrocket and stuff like that, and say, can we go back and start back, when Obama promised us all these things, and and what will happen, how health insurance was, it was never perfect. There is not a perfect system. There's not a perfect anything really for a lot of these things. And so but it was working pretty well. You could switch insurance and do whatever, and all this. But Obamacare, just put in a whole bunch of rules that
Right.
also initially tied, the health insurance companies, because before, when if you were going, you could get coverage as a child, while you were, I guess, still in college. But once you graduated college, you had to get your own plan. Obamacare said, oh, you can stay covered till you're age 26. Well, I mean, plus the fact that you were no longer being, you no longer had to have a physical or whatever. They could not rate you on your on how, if you were ill person. So they had to figure out how they were going to charge for insurance, thinking that everybody's going to be the same. And you've got
Right.
sick people and you've got well people, but
Right. So as they were the government was trying to get in the position of sculpting the pools,
right,
the risk pools. And it's like, there's a lot of good ideas on how to build risk pools that don't require the government, right? Like in fact, the more you get government out of the way, the better you can probably do it. That, like, why shouldn't all the Latter-day Saints be a pool? So I mean, y'all sell each other insurance, right? There's a big Latter-day Saints policy that you can all sign up for. You don't have to, but you can. And then y'all are the risk pool, right? Your whole church all over the world is the risk pool. or all over the country, I guess. You could do, I mean, and that's just an example, the Boy Scouts, right? All the pool players, whatever, let it be privately funded. And then you can offer, products like, for instance, pro football players probably need a different amount and type of health insurance than me and you do, right? We're not running around bashing into people anymore, right? So unless, it's absolutely necessary. But I mean, what I'm saying, for the most part, we don't need that type of insurance. We need some other types of insurance that they don't need because, they're not 64. So, and if they are, more power to them. But, so you have different needs. You shouldn't be pushed into the same box. And his whole thing was to get it where everybody's in that box so that nobody can get out, and B, nobody can sell into it. And so then you would have had to settle for, single payer. You'd have been in the same shape as, England, where they wait, 10 years for knee surgery and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And I think that there's something along the lines of this model, in the sense of for the evangelicals, a lot of them have Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah.
And I think there's some others that are similar in that. So, if you're basically a Christian evangelical, you can join, the Samaritan's Purse, and
that's kind of a one-time, you throw X amount of money in, and then you're just
it's something, and it's a big pool. They basically, everybody there is self-insured, and when you have a medical issue, you send them your invoice or whatever, the bill from the hospital, and then they pay whatever percentage that they pay, and I guess you pay the rest or whatever. But it's something that is different. It takes them out of the government system per se, and they've decided to become their own risk pool. People who've got at least a common interest of being Christian evangelicals. And as far as I know, it works pretty well for them.
Right. But, the other thing is, if you're an evangelical, hopefully in most cases, you also have a common interest in being honest and forthright about your medical expenses, which I think is, a system like that is going to depend more on trust.
Right. And the other thing is that it's unlikely to have, they need a lot of people to be in the plan to cover something really catastrophic. And this is where it gets to be a little tricky, I think. It's just that there's things like cancer care and other things that can be extremely expensive, and I'm not sure that they have the resources to handle, a bunch of cancer patients or whatever, who need, very expensive care. So that may not, you have to kind of think about what's going on in your life, and what fits and everything like that. I mean, it's like I've said time and time again. I mean, my wife and I are both on Medicare. I mean, our premiums are going up, I don't know, 12% next year or whatever. That's not a huge amount, but when all these liberals, lefties talk about, these soaring Obamacare premiums, they don't really know that for sure. And I've seen plenty of evidence that says not going to happen like that anyway. Right. And then I remember seeing somebody the other day says, like, well, maybe there should be a cap, on the income. It's like, the Democrats took the cap off. Yeah. And that's the bigger argument here, is like, it's not really all the subsidies. It's really the big fight has been over the enhanced subsidies, where they basically gave the subsidies to almost everybody who applied. Yeah. Would get something, right? I mean, which made no sense whatsoever, and now they're trying to put that genie back in the bottle, no, it's not going to happen. It's just...
No. And think about it is like, it's like I used to smoke, right? I smoked cigarettes. So one of the things that happens is when you quit, okay, 3, 4, 5 days later, you've got to do the very hardest part, right? They're like totally, every 10 minutes you want a cigarette, right? You get past that part. Okay. But then but then when you get the desires, right? They're pretty, strong desires. Okay. But you've beaten it, right? You've done the hard part. The hard part is that every 10 minutes, I'm thinking about a cigarette every 10 minutes, right? I'm past that. I'm thinking about it once or twice a day, right? And then it gets to once a day. And then it's like, I haven't thought about smoking a cigarette in decades. Right. So, we get to a point where it just, it doesn't come up anymore. But, you have to, you got to beat once you've beaten that hardest part, you can't go back. Right. You can't go back to subsidies. It's like, just take our medicine, just have those tough days and get out of this, because it's not going to get any better. Subsidies aren't going to get any smaller. The need is not going to decrease. Just snuff it out while you can.
All right. So how long ago did you quit smoking?
Oh, 25, 30 years.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
That's something the latent alkaline could never get over, unfortunately. Yeah. Which I'm sure is what led to his COPD and everything too, and all that. But you make your choices in life, and you live, and those choices will have consequences. Some far more tragic than others. All right, moving on. So Governor Hochul she's not totally on board with Mamdani's proposals here. She's nixed the free bus service, though she did say she would be in favor of the free childcare. I guess I'll put up to age 5 throughout the state, but that's a $15 billion expense. It's like, where are you getting that from? Are you taxing the corporations and you're wealthy even more? You're like aren't they like the highest tax state around? Just about. Right. I mean, I saw something the other day. It's like, Tennessee was saying like, we're open for business. Come on down to Nashville.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Tennessee's really growing. It's really,
Yeah, Tennessee doesn't. I don't think they have a personal income tax.
No, they don't have any income tax.
Yeah. So,
basically let Art Laffer write their tax laws, basically. So, they did. He actually worked with them. I think he lives in Tennessee now, because of the work he did to make it a great place to live. But yeah, you're starting to see to me, that one's kind of useful. If free bus, if you're really going to tell people they can't drive into the city, then that's not a bad one. You can get around from place to place. Hurts the taxi guys, right? But the taxi guys have endured every kind of subsidy of everything else. But she's going to get around. I mean, he's to the left of her, and it's going to be interesting to watch New York deal with the expenses that he is going to visit on the city, right? I mean, on the state, because some of the stuff he wants to do is pretty wild, and they're who will have to pay for it.
Yeah, I think Montgomery County here, I think they have, or they are going to make ride-on service free, and so it's like, okay, I didn't vote for this, but I'm going to be paying for this. That's the biggest hurdle I have, because my property taxes continue to go up. The liberals in charge have they have no penchant for giving property tax property owners any kind of tax relief whatsoever. So it's it ensnares even liberals who get mad about this. There's a growing sentiment, I think, across the county, throughout the state, about rising property taxes and no relief. It's like, what are we getting for this? Why, where are we spending the money? And the Democrats are very good at spending money. They're just not good at cutting anything.
Yeah, but the thing about it is though, they're also they're not responsible about how they do it, right? So one day they will decide that there's enough votes against property taxes that they'll just stop doing it. There will be no consideration of all the things they pay for with the property taxes. So then you will have massive service interruptions and upheaval of every. It's coming. I mean, at some point they'll just say, okay, we won't do that anymore. But there's no way around it. The way Montgomery County is set up, that's about the only place. So you've driven out most of the industry, right? I mean, you have a little bit of the biotech sector left on the 270 corridor, but I mean, basically Montgomery County, it's about 870,000 people or so of a bedroom community. The other thing is when I came up here, Montgomery County had more population than Fairfax. and now it's about 40% of Fairfax's population.
Yeah, I mean, Fairfax, I mean, Northern Virginia, I mean, they've grown like crazy.
Because they're for wealth. They let you build wealth here.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you go, for me, if I go into Virginia, what do I see? I see plenty of names on the top of skyscrapers or whatever, corporate names. You see very little of that in Montgomery County at all.
They don't even want it,
Yeah, but Montgomery County, state of Maryland, they've done a very good job of driving business out, particularly under Democrat administrations, which is just continue to think, oh, these guys are our piggy bank, and so we'll just continue to add to their burden, and they're like, can't do business here anymore. We're leaving.
Yeah. You're down to Geico, basically, right? Geico and the HCA.
Marriott.
Yeah. Hospital Corporation of America, old folks homes. That's about it.
You just got a handful of things that are out here that you can think about now. But you go to Virginia, and it's like people they love decamping to Virginia from not even just Maryland, just even from other states too.
Yeah, that Tyson's now is the biggest cluster of office space between Atlanta and New York.
I'm not surprised.
More than Charlotte, more than Richmond, more than DC, all that stuff. The Tyson's is the epicenter of office space.
Yeah, all I can say is that because we go to Dulles to catch our plane when we go to Utah now, since we've got a direct flight into Provo, is that the real bane of my existence on that whole thing is the return home, is to get onto 495 from Dulles at 4:00 in the afternoon, and just the backup that there's a backup to get from the access road onto 495. There's a bunch of construction, and I don't know what the heck's going on there, and it just seems like there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's just so much traffic. It's like it's like, please just get me into Maryland, or get me somewhere where we can actually speed this up a little bit.
Yeah, you know why that is, right? Because there's one more lane in Virginia than there is in Maryland. That's why it's a bottleneck. The bridge is a bottleneck. Maryland doesn't. We build a bridge, so we'll have more traffic. Like, you have traffic now. It's backed up. Your people are wasting their time sitting on 495, 270, backed up, right? Because you refuse to recognize that you have a lot of cars and need a couple more roads.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just think about the old days too, of before 270 expanded.
Yeah.
But it's rush hour traffic, it's choked now. Even with expanded roads, it's just clogged.
Yeah, and it hurts. I mean, it hurts a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, like I end up going to the Nationals maybe 4 or 5 times a year because it's just too much trouble. It's 24 miles. I go all kind of places that are 24 miles all the time. That's not a problem. But 24 miles into DC is a huge problem.
Yeah, I really avoid that stuff. It's just, and I used to commute to DC all the time. I did that for a long, long time, but I just like, you have to force me to do that. Really, about the only time I go into DC is because I've got a church related thing that I need to get to or whatever. But otherwise, I don't, my car never crosses a DC line. It's just too hard, too much traffic, and with DC's speed cameras, which will charge you an arm and a leg, it's like, I don't even want to risk that anymore. It's just, their system is just crazy. Anyway, so we got to keep going here. So a couple things that like things I don't like about, I don't agree with Trump on. So, he's floated this whole, the whole tariff dividend thing. It's like, look, you're not bringing enough money to fund that to begin with. And you've got, we just, whatever money's coming in should just go to keeping our deficits small. So we don't, don't do this. I mean, I don't think this idea is really going to go anywhere at all. And then he floated this idea about the 50-year mortgage, which is just like, no, I mean, that's a terrible idea that doesn't deserve any consideration whatsoever.
Why do you say it's terrible?
Well, it doesn't.
The other one, by the way, just like I usually agree with what Trump says, but I agree with you on the $2,000 payouts. Just lower the debt. Right, that's more important. Just keep pounding that debt. Just get that down.
And it's not going to help the economy. It actually
Right.
risks
This is Keynesian
creating
nonsense.
hyperinflation and other issues because of that. So there are a lot of risks with doing that. It's one thing when you do it because you have COVID and stuff like that, and you're trying to jumpstart stuff and all this stuff. But we don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need that.
We don't need.
And that's
we
like
don't
Bush.
need
We
that.
didn't need it when Bush did it with the $400 checks, and
Yeah,
we don't need it now. And it just made us. We went from having a surplus to being broke, right?
Yeah.
And we've never recovered. And we don't need that now. Giving people $2,000 is not going to fix the economy in any meaningful way. It's just going to make the debt problem continue on. And you cannot address the debt problem and send everybody $2,000. The other one, I don't know about that. I've been thinking about this 50-year mortgage. So yeah, you'd pay more, but if you pay off the whole 50 years, you'd have a higher total payment than if you only had 30 years. But the argument is it would make your payments lower, so more people would be able to afford it. Now, if you want to sign up for a 50-year mortgage, I mean, if you're, they're saying, nobody can buy a house before they're 45 or whatever. This would address that, right? You'd have lower payments, more people would be able to buy a house in theory. But my thing is, since World War II, the homeownership rate in the United States has been between about 59 and 63%. Every single thing the government has tried to do to goose that figure has been a miserable failure. Like we're having a conversation with a bunch of people right now about TARP, right? That's what TARP was caused by, was attempts by the government in good faith from both parties to goose home ownership rates, to make it where a higher percentage of Americans owned their home as opposed to rent it. My boss said yesterday, he was talking about, people have a natural he said have a natural desire to try to, own the roof over their head, have this, that stake in their own lives and their communities and their families that, they can't kick us out of here. I own this place. Right. But, every time we've tried to do anything about it, it's been a miserable failure. My thing is let home ownership be what it is, do what it is. But when I look at this, it's like, if the government's not underwriting any of it and banks want to have 50-year mortgages and people want to sign them, I'm not really seeing a big bunch of societal damage.
Look, if the banks want to do this and they want to run the risk of doing this, that's a business decision, and that's okay. But in general, it's like this is not a great thing for homeowners. I mean, it does lower their payments, but those payments are going to basically be all interest. Even under a 30-year mortgage, it takes a long time before you actually have built up any halfway reasonable amount of equity, because interest gets paid first. And so it takes a long time for that. So on a 50-year mortgage, it's going to even stretch that period even longer. Not that people are going to stay in their homes 50 years, but there has been less mobility than there used to be. People are staying in their homes longer. Some of them are kind of trapped in it. They want to move, but they can't move because they can't afford to move, and all these things. And I don't know what the future holds for that at all. But this whole thing is mind-boggling. I just think back, like on car loans. I think when I started, when I was a young adult, I think the car loans were 3 years, and then the 4-year thing was like a big deal. And then the 5-year thing became a big deal. And then I watched an ad once several years ago, and it's like, there's 7-year car loans.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like, you want to talk about, you talk about, this is when you're actually buying a depreciable property. Houses for the most part will be fairly stable or will appreciate. Some places they might get depressed and depreciate. But when you drive your car off, a new car off the showroom lot, you're losing what, 30%, 40%, depending on what the car is. So you're already kind of underwater. And so that's why the repo men right now are having their business is booming. People can't pay their car loans. They went ahead and they gave me a 7-year loan that's affordable, but then it became unaffordable because of I lost a job or whatever.
Yeah.
My hours were reduced, and so
Or
then
I've got $10,000 to pay on a $5,000 car, right?
right,
What
right.
else can I do here?
Right. I might as well turn in the keys or let them take it away
Yeah.
because I'm never going to get ahead on this thing. And this is it's just I bought way too much car for what I could really afford and all of that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think that idea is going to go very far. But Trump, I will give Trump credit. He's the master of ideas.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a he's a disruptor.
It's off the wall. I mean, I never thought of it before. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Especially since when I was younger, I was also told too is that if you had a mortgage, you should throw in an extra payment and try to basically treat that as almost like 15-year, and then you'll shave so much interest off your loan. If you can afford it, you pay that down faster. Not
right. And you
not
could,
younger.
you could do that with a 50.
Yeah,
It'd really be a lot of incentive to try to pay it down faster.
right.
So,
Okay, so we got a few more things to go before we wrap up here. Trump is threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion over this edited footage. Now, the show apparently, I guess, only aired in the UK. Um, the likelihood that this case was, they want to file this in Florida, it probably wouldn't succeed. But Trump is very good about promoting this kind of thing. The BBC's now, and they've not had they've had some issues for years anyway, and then this has thrown even more turmoil. A couple of their executives have now resigned, but it is pretty reprehensible in terms of what they did by putting together these different parts of the speech that he gave on January 6th, and then throwing the Proud Boys thing in there to make it look like I gave the speech, and then we encouraged them to march off and do this stuff, which was not what happened. But their argument, I guess, is it doesn't change what actually happens. Like, no, that's not the issue.
right. That's right. And that's been an interesting thing to like watch. So yeah, they splice it together to make it look like he told the J6 crowd to go assault the Capitol, basically, and to do it violently. And that's true. I mean, it's true that they did that. It's not true that that's what he said, because what he said was to go in peace. And there was a lot of talk about not being violent from Trump that day, which is a real inconvenient fact to the folks on the other side. But it's true. But they, and they were caught. And this is, there's edits made, edits for clarity made all the time. But this is one where they changed the meaning. They changed the facts, right? I mean, they're not caught in a mistake here. They're caught in a lie. There's a difference. And so, yeah, I think for the integrity of it, they had to go. But the reaction on the other side of the pond was really interesting, because like they're harming our news service. It's like, your news service is lying to you. But he could put them out of business. So, if they're lying to you, then but there's a lot of Trump is wrong, because the British have a lot of national pride in the BBC. That's like, that does not compute, right? Either Trump is right or he's wrong. You can say, like, it didn't air here. I mean, he's unlikely to get a whole lot of money out of this, or it would demonstrate that he's filing in the right court and whatnot. But if you're lying about I like the idea that, when these people lie about stuff, they're going to be held accountable. I mean, that's going to change some he got Stephanopoulos for something, because Stephanopoulos said he was a rapist, right? And ABC legal people told Stephanopoulos, don't say he's a rapist, because he hasn't been convicted of rape. And he said it like 3 times. So he was like, those rules don't apply to me. Well, yeah, they do. $15 million says they do apply to you. So, if Trump's, when Trump leaves office, all he's done is put the fear of God into the media about brazenly lying that you might get caught and really have to pay a lot of money for it. Then, the Kamala Harris edits, right, of the 60 Minutes, same thing. That's one where, you did something false with your edit, right? I understand, like, they put in the clear, they take out some of the uhs and I get all that, right? Cleaning it up. But that's not what happened here. They changed the answer. They changed what she said to make her look smart or whatever. They never changed anything to favor Trump, right? It's always changed to hurt Trump one way or the other. So, if all he accomplishes as president is putting the fear of the God in the military, the media, that they better be accurate or they're going to pay a lot of money, then he will have had a really successful presidency.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this thing turns out. But Trump definitely he's got the big stick here on them, and at least he kind of awakened them a little bit. Just kind of don't whether or not he gets anything out of this or not, he's just like, don't even try this again, because I'll be back.
Yeah.
All right, let's quickly go through the last few items here. New York Times reported that several corporate executives are skipping COP30. Some of them are in Brazil, but they're attending other meetings. This is kind of maybe the Bill Gates, Donald Trump effect. I mean, Bill Gates has kind of changed his tune on climate change. Trump's got very heavy influence on this whole climate change issue, and corporations are kind of lining up and saying, yeah, we're probably not going to participate, on this. This is not the existential crisis that that everybody had said it was before.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. It's another one where it's getting, the lies are getting crushed under the truth, right? They had 40 years of alarmism, and you just wait, these things are about to happen, and they never happened. Miami is not underwater. New York is not underwater. The Plymouth Rock is right where it was 400, 500 years ago, whatever it was, right? They're just like the things they said that they threatened us would happen didn't happen. They made predictions that you could measure. You could actually see if they were right or wrong, and they were wrong. It's like you get to be wrong so many times where we say you don't really know what you're talking about. So, and that's what's happened here. Like that, the whole global warming movement is in deep trouble, and it's about to be in even worse trouble in the United States because of they've removed the endangerment finding. So everything we were doing to limit carbon, we no longer do, right? Because we don't have to limit carbon anymore. And that means, cars can be made differently. All kinds of industrial processes could be made differently, and things will get a lot cheaper just over that one thing.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move on. We'll quickly run through these other things too. So Burger King, I think the Wall Street Journal wrote about this one, where they're scrambling to get pennies into the stores. We're not quite at a cashless society yet, and a lot of their customers pay by cash, and Burger King has basically kind of run out of pennies with they were doing everything they can to gather up pennies, but they're also part of the revolution since the president basically has said, we're not going to make pennies anymore. We're not going to mint pennies. So retailers are trying to sort out, rounding up and rounding down. People don't probably mind the rounding down. It's the rounding up I have a problem with, but on balance, it probably works out to be more or less a wash, right? I mean,
well, I mean, if you consider 3 round up, then
three round up, but
you're dealing with integers here, right? You don't really have 2.5.
It's not, it's not going to be a huge deal, but it probably grates on a lot of people. I rarely pay with anything with cash, so it doesn't really affect me.
Right.
And maybe I should go back in my coin jar and see if I got any more pennies I can turn into the bank to throw those back into circulation or whatnot. But we're seeing the effects of the end of the penny and what it does to cash transactions. So for those out there who live, you're going to have to live with it. Okay, just either you get your own personal supply of pennies, or just deal with the fact that
figure out a way.
You're going to go to the nearest. If it's a 3-cent transaction, you're going to go to a nickel. If it's a 2-cent transaction, you're going to go to the next dollar. So,
all right. I think so too. I think that's another one. 6 months from now, no one's going to be talking about that.
Yeah, well, it takes, like everything else, takes a little bit of time to kind of work its way through. Other countries have been doing that for a long time, and nobody even thinks twice about it anymore.
Right.
So, there's this idea that the next Commander Stadium would be named after Donald Trump. Okay, my only thing, Here's like, fine. If the Trump family is going to pay for the naming rights, okay, and they win the naming rights, and the ownership wants that, fine. But there's no dictum should be had out there where it says you need to put my name on there.
Well, I mean, you can, I think that originated from somebody asking him a question. He's like, "Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Sounds good to me."
Yeah, well, like he loves his name everywhere.
Yeah, but I don't think it should have to be named. I mean, it was named for a politician before, right? I mean, who was RFK to have a stadium named after him?
Yeah, but the days are different now. Times have changed where it's all about this.
Yeah.
There is. I don't know that there's an owner around unless they're really palsy-wowsy with Trump that would be willing to give up the money that naming rights bring in to put his name on there. Maybe they do it for a year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or through the end of his term, once he's out of office, it's like bye.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I mean, the way it's lining up now, he will have been pretty instrumental in accomplishing this, right?
Right.
Making them use the land that way. He's using the big, I don't know if you saw this, but there's like starting to be some reaction to this, but he's using home rule as a cudgel, right? Like, you don't give me what I want, we're going to take away home rule. And he's done it a few times now. And so this is one where he's kind of said, I'm going to, make the stadium deal happen, or we're going to look at home rule. And so they're like, okay, we'll make the stadium deal happen. So, I mean, his role in this is not incidental. So, if a stadium's built, he will have been, significantly sort of responsible for it.
Yeah, maybe it can
Not the most pie in the sky thing.
No, but maybe get the road leading up into the parking lot like Trump Way or something. I don't know. Trump Lot A, Trump Lot B. Who knows? Yeah, anything is possible with Trump. That's the thing. I put nothing past what happens with him. Go to LSU and Brian Kelly, and he and LSU are having a real tussle about the $54 million. Where are you on this?
Well, so when they told the AD Scott Woodward when he was going to fire Kelly, he said, "Don't fire him, reassign him within the athletic department. That way, you don't have to pay his buyout." And he'll go find another coaching job, where he's not going to sit there and be the director of ticket operations for LSU, right? He's going to go do something else. So they didn't do it. He just fired him. So now they're trying to claim maybe they didn't fire him, or they're going to fire him for cause, in which case he would have to negotiate a settlement. It wouldn't be the set amount. We got a lot of people, oil and gas and chemicals and all the stuff that gets made and sold in Louisiana. Somebody needs to go write that man a check and get this over with. It's we owe the money. You wanted the fun or whatever of reading in the newspaper that he'd been fired, and picturing the AD calling him in and saying, "You're fired. We're going in another direction. Ha ha ha. All right, we don't have to put up with you anymore." Okay, that's good. You got that little moment of joy out of your heart, but you now owe the guy $54 million.
You signed into that contract.
You signed him. That's why the athletic director got fired. That's why before, even before he got fired, the governor said, "I can tell you that guy ain't going to pick the next coach."
Yeah.
I just think they ought to pay him. And there's who Scott McKay is. He had a piece that said that they're still paying him his $800,000 a month. Wouldn't that be nice? $800,000 a month. I wouldn't have to work a whole lot of months, where I was pretty much off the chain. But $800,000 a month, and so he really doesn't have any action, anything he can act on against the state, because he's getting his money. So it'll be interesting to see how it all comes out.
All right, and one more sports note, a little sadder, is the death of Lenny Wilkens. Great basketball player, NBA, great coach. Coached, I believe he coached more games than anybody in NBA history, right?
He was the all-time winner, winning as coach at one point too.
Yeah.
I think Popovich may have passed him, but yeah, he had a ton of wins in the league, and he was also the coach of the Sonics for their one title. The great late 70s, 1978, the Bullets beat the Sonics for the NBA championship, and the next year the Sonics beat the Bullets. and neither one of them has been heard of.
and he was also a player coach. I mean, he did that.
Player coach, yeah.
Smart
guy. His record, his win-loss, his percentage is not all that great because he took on some bad teams.
Right.
But a gentleman, beloved by everybody in basketball.
Yeah, and I don't think his final one-loss record reflects what a great person he was and a great ball player he was and all that. So I think he's in the Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach.
That's correct.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we'll see you again next week.